I was 12 the first time the floorboards whispered my name. Everyone thought I ran away that night. They never knew the house kept me, fed me memories I didn't want, and showed me a truth I could never forget. Now I've come back, and it's still waiting. Not angry, not vengeful, just hungry. For what we bury and pretend never happened. Rain stitched the sky in gray thread, the wind unpicking it just as quickly. Lydia Bell stood at the edge of her late grandfather's property, clutching a rusted key and a letter that felt too heavy for just paper. The old farmhouse had been abandoned for nearly 30 years. Its once white paint now stripped away too. Bare gray wood, its windows staring blindly through cracked glass. She hadn't been here since she was 6. Just flashes of memory remained. A strange smell, the sound of something scratching behind the walls, and her grandfather's quiet eyes that never seemed to blink long enough. The letter had arrived 2 weeks ago, postmarked from a local law office in Vermont. Asterisk to Miss Lydia Bell. If you're reading this, then my estate has passed to you. I ask only one thing. Don't ignore the house. You'll find answers in the silence beneath the floorboards. Asterisk. The key came wrapped in black velvet. Now she stood at the door. The key in her hand, trembling slightly. She told herself it was the cold, not nerves, not fear. It was a rational person, a biology teacher after all, not someone who chased ghosts. The key clicked in the lock. The door opened slower than it should have, dragging across the warped wood floor with a low, reluctant groan. Inside, the house smelled of mildew, damp wood, something harder to place, something metallic and dry. She stepped in. The air shifted behind her as the door swung, shut on its own. Her phone had no signal. She expected that. This part of Vermont was notorious for dead zones. She'd brought a flashlight just in case. But light filtered in through the slats in the boarded windows, enough to make out the dusty remnants of a life left behind. A dusty recliner sat at an awkward angle to the stone hearth. On a side table, a cracked photo frame lay face down. She picked it up. Her grandfather stared back at her, young, unsmiling, standing beside a woman she didn't recognize, not her grandmother. The woman's eyes had been scratched out, deep grooves, carved right through the glass, her breath caught. She flipped the photo over. In neat cursive, someone had written. She heard it too. A sudden creak from above, she froze. Mice, she told herself. Squirrels, maybe. The roof was probably full of holes. She walked cautiously through the main room, her boots echoing hollowly on the wooden floor. A shiver ran up her spine. Every step made the boards beneath her feet groan faintly like they were remembering. Then she heard it, a faint tapping, soft but deliberate, like fingers drumming on hollow wood. It was coming from under her feet. She knelt slowly and pressed her ear to the floor. The boards were cold, but something about the space beneath them felt ... wrong. Too still, too quiet, and yet the tapping continued. 5 beats, a pause. 5 more. Like a message in a language she didn't understand. She pulled back quickly and stood up. Nope, she whispered to the silence. Just mice. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that the house was listening. The kitchen was worse. Water had leaked in through a broken window and mold clung to the corners like something alive. Dishes still sat in the sink, dry but stained. The fridge was unplugged, but she didn't dare open it. She remembered suddenly how her grandfather never used the fridge not for food, only for preserving things, he used to say. She'd thought he meant vegetables. Now, she wasn't sure. On the kitchen table lay another letter, sealed in wax. It hadn't been there before. She was sure of it. She opened it carefully. Asterisk Lydia. If you're reading this, It means the house has begun to wake. Listen closely. There is a space beneath the floor that does not belong to this room. I kept it quiet for as long as I could. Fed it in whispers, starved. It of names, but it is hungry again. Remembers you. Asterisk, asterisk, stay 3 nights. After that, you'll understand. Lock the bedroom door. Don't answer if it knocks. Asterisk's grandfather sheet read the letter 3 times before folding it and slipping it into her coat. Her hands were shaking now, and the tapping under the floor was back faster this time, less rhythmic, urgent. The bedroom was the last place she wanted to go, but the sky was darkening fast, and the rain had returned with cold determination. She'd brought supplies, sleeping bags, snacks, a battery lantern. She set them up on the old twin bed, trying not to look at the peeling wallpaper or the deep, claw-like scratches etched into the inside of the closet door. The tapping hadn't stopped. It had just moved. Now it came from the wall. Lydia sat on the bed and took a long breath. Her grandfather had been insane. That much seemed obvious. But the house had felt sentient, like it remembered everything she'd forgotten. Something shifted beneath her. Not the mattress, the floorboards. Like a breath, like something settling just inches below. She stood and pulled back the rug. A single plank was loose, its edges worn as if fingers had pulled at it, over and over again. She knelt, hesitated then, pried it up. Beneath it was darkness, not just a crawl space or cellar. It looked like a hole that light didn't want to enter. The smell hit her neck, salt and rust and something else. It's too deep to name. Far down in the darkness, something moved. Then she heard the whisper, close as breath in her ear. You came back. She slammed the board shut, heart thundering, the silence. That followed wasn't empty, it was watching. Lydia didn't sleep that night. The wind howled around the house like a wounded animal, rattling the rotted shutters. Rain tapped on the roof in fits and bursts, never quite steady, never quite random, always. Just enough to make her think it was footsteps on the attic floor. But it wasn't the storm that kept her awake. It was the whisper. Faint, constant, seeping. Through the floorboards like smoke. It didn't come from one direction. It came from below, around, within, not in words. At least not at first. Just murmurs like voices on the other side of a wall, too muffled to make out, but just loud enough to remind her she wasn't alone. She clutched her phone, watching the battery drain by the hour. Still no signal, no Wi-Fi. Just the dim glow of the screen to push the shadows back for a few moments at a time. She had locked the bedroom. The door like her grandfather warned. She even pushed the old dresser in front of it, heart racing at how natural it felt to barricade herself in. At 3:14 a.m., she heard knocking soft. 3 times, she held her breath. Then again, 3 more. Like knuckles against bone, she didn't move, didn't blink. Her hands dug into the blanket, her fingernails carving crescent moons in the fabric. The knocking stopped. Asterisk then, the whisper changed. Lydia. The voice was wrong. Too flat, too calm. Like it had learned her name phonetically but had no idea what it meant. It didn't sound like her grandfather, or her mother, anyone she remembered. Just voice by morning it was gone. Sunlight sliced through the slats in the boarded-up window, casting bars across the floor. She hadn't slept, but her body had grown numb from stillness. Every muscle ached. She removed the dresser and stepped into the hallway, expecting the air to be thick with rot or blood or something worse. But it was calm. It was quiet, even too quiet. The tapping was gone. The whisper too. But the silence that remained wasn't peaceful. It was listening. She moved through the house, flashlight in hand. The living room hadn't changed, but the photo frame on the table had. The scratched-out woman. Her image was gone, entirely wiped clean, like she'd been erased from history. The grooves in the glass remained, but the face was no longer beneath them. Lydia picked up the photo, inspecting it. She turned it over again. The handwriting was different now.
Ow.
Do you remember her yet? She dropped it with a choked breath and backed away, bumping into the recliner. The furniture felt heavier today, like it had aged overnight. She blinked at the fireplace, and something clicked in her memory. There used to be a trap door there, behind the hearth. She'd seen it as a child. She knelt and ran her fingers along the base of the brick. Nothing obvious, but the wood paneling just beside. The stonework was loose. She tugged, and a narrow panel popped open with a sigh of dust and stale air. A square opening lay behind it. Not quite big enough for a person, but deep enough that a child might have once fit inside. A false crawl space? A box sat within? Wooden and locked with a rusted latch. She tugged at it, didn't budge. She stood, brushing off her knees, and heard it again. That voice. You put her there. She spun around. No one, just silence. But the memory slammed into her, sudden and unwanted. The sound of screaming hers or someone else's. A woman's voice pleading, the scent of iron in the air. Small hands over her ears, then darkness, then silence. She backed away from the fireplace, breath quickening. None of this is real, she muttered. It's stress, hallucinations, sleep deprivation. It's just a house. But the house disagreed. In the kitchen, something had changed. The table was gone, not just moved gone. The entire wooden slab and chairs had vanished, leaving only the marks in the floor where the legs had rested, in their place. A single note on the ground: you forgot the rules, do not open the floor at night. She ripped the note in half, then in quarters, then threw the pieces into the sink. The fridge creaked behind her. Slowly. A long, slow whine of hinges. She hadn't touched it. She turned, expecting to see it open. It wasn't. But a single drop of red slid down the handle. Lydia bolted back to the bedroom, slamming the door shut. She grabbed the letter from the night before and read it again, looking for something, anything that made sense. 3 nights, he said. She had made it through one. Just 2 more. She paced the room, trying to think. Her grandfather had kept this place sealed for decades. He must have had a reason. What did he feed? What did he starve? Then she remembered the words, fed it in. Whispers. Starved it of names. She opened her notebook, grabbed a pen, and scribbled. Do not speak. Its name. Do not listen. Do not open the floor. The whisper returned that night, but not from beneath the floor, from inside the walls. She pressed her ear against the wallpaper. Why did you leave her? The voice asked. Tears filled her eyes. There was a name on the tip of her tongue, a name that made her chest ache, made her stomach turn. Someone she'd forgotten, in purpose. A girl. No, a sister. She stumbled back from the wall, gasping. I didn't leave her, Lydia whispered. She was gone. The voice laughed, dry and broken, like leaves crumbling in her hand. She never left. You locked her under the floor. Just like he taught you. You did this, Lydia. The morning came, but the sun refused to follow. A low, pale light seeped into the house like a dying breath, illuminating nothing, warming less. Lydia sat on the edge of the bed, her notebook clutched in one hand, the pen in the other. She hadn't written anything since the night before. She couldn't. The whispers had stopped at dawn, but the silence that replaced them was worse. Was expectant. Like a lung held too long, like a question about to be asked. Like she never left. Those words echoed through her skull, even in the stillness. Her sister, the one she hadn't remembered. The one she'd buried somewhere in the dust of her childhood. But that wasn't right. She would have remembered a sister, wouldn't she? No. Stared at the wall, at the patch where the wallpaper had peeled away during the night. Thin lines were carved into the plaster behind it. Not words tally marks. Hundreds of them. One carefully drawn counted desperate. She ran her hand across them, and her skin prickled. How long had someone been down there? She returned to the living room, where the photo frame still lay on the floor. She picked it up again, almost afraid to look. Her grandfather's face was gone now, toy-arist entirely. The glass was blank. But this time there was something new, etched across the wood. Don't forget her again. She dropped it. In the daylight art, what passed for daylight, the house seemed to breathe. Walls subtly swelled and creaked. Shadows stretched just slightly too far. The floor groaned even when she stood still. She made her way back to the fireplace, drawn to the black box hidden behind the false panel. It sat in the shadows like it was waiting. She reached for it again, tugging harder at the latch. Still rusted. Shut. Anger flared sudden and hot. She grabbed the iron poker from beside the hearth and smashed it against the lock with a clatter of metal and splinters. On the third strike, the latch gave way. The box creaked open. Inside, a bundle of aged cloth, stained with something dark and long-dried. Beneath that, an old cassette recorder, microcassette, already inside. She stared at it, her heart racing. The recorder looked like it hadn't been touched in decades, and it still bore a sticky note on its front. Night 2. Play only when you're alone. She pressed play at first. Just static. Then her grandfather's voice. It remembers sound. It remembers rhythm. If you're hearing this, Lydia, then you're already caught in its memory. That's how it feeds through what we forget, through what we bury. She clutched the recorder tighter. Your mother tried to leave with you. She thought she could outrun it. But I told her no one leaves with clean hands. We all gave it something. It doesn't forget. There was a pause. Then the sound of a girl sobbing, muffled. From a distance, please, please let me out. Tape clicked off. Lydia threw the recorder across the room. It struck the wall and bounced to the floor. Plastic cracked but not broken. Her vision blurred. The memories were creeping back, dripping through cracks in her mind she didn't know. Were there a girl? Blonde hair, laughing in the grass, hiding beneath the porch. Playing with broken dolls. Screaming one night. And then silence. No one spoke of her after that. Her mother never said the name. Her grandfather refused to answer her questions. She had a sister, and she had forgotten her. Not by accident. The basement door appeared that afternoon. She swore it hadn't been there the day before half, concealed behind a sagging curtain in the hallway. A wooden door with a single iron ring for a handle. No knob. Just cold wood and the smell of wet stone. Her hand hovered over the ring. She didn't want to open it. She couldn't walk away either. Something wanted her to see. She pulled the door open. The staircase descended into utter darkness. Not a single ray of light made it past the threshold. The air that rolled up from below was damp and cold and smelled like turned earth. She turned on her flashlight, its beam cut through the dark like a sword beneath her feet deep. That, the blackness swallowed her whole. Step by step, she went down. The air grew heavier, like breathing through cotton. Her footsteps echoed too loud, but the space down there was far too wide for what she could see. She reached the bottom. The basement was made of stone walls, damp and sweating, the floor uneven with patches of dirt and old bloodstains. At the center stood a child-sized chair, wooden stained chains. bolted it to the floor, carved into the wall above. Forgotten things remember themselves. Lydia stumbled back, her breath itching. Beside the chair, a small figure crouched. She didn't scream, she couldn't. The girl's back was to her, long tangled hair, pale limbs. She was whispering something over and over again, soft and frantic. Lydia raised the flashlight. Emily. The girl went still. Slowly she turned. Her eyes were hollow sockets, empty as the space beneath the floorboards. Blood wept from her mouth like ink. "You promised you'd remember me." The flashlight died. Lydia scrambled up the stairs, hitting every step on her way up. She slammed the door behind her and bolted it with shaky hands. Her mind spun to Emily. Her name was Emily, her sister. Twin. The one her mother tried to save. The one her grandfather kept locked away. The one she had seen in nightmares for years and dismissed as dreams she hadn't left. Emily, she had watched. Watched as the door was closed, as the floor was nailed shut. As her sister screamed her name over and over until her voice broke and the house swallowed the sound. And she had. Forgotten because forgetting was easier, because remembering meant admitting the truth. She did nothing, and now the house wanted her to repay that silence that night. She didn't lock the bedroom door. She sat in the center of the room, cross-legged, her eyes on the floorboard she had lifted before. The whisper had returned, not from below, from within. "Come down, Lydia." She lifted the board again. This time, there were stairs. The stairs should not have been there. Lydia stared into the gap beneath the floorboard. Her dusty wood had been replaced by stone steps that spiraled into impossible blackness. The air, rising from below, was stale and heavy, tinged with rot and something sharper like burnt sugar or old perfume left in the sun. She should have run instead. She lowered herself into the hole, one foot on the top step, then another leaving behind. The cold safety of the room. The floorboard closed behind her with a soft click, sealing itself shut like a lid on a coffin. Her flashlight flickered, then steadied. The walls here were stone, but smooth polished, almost alive. There was no dirt, no dust, just a long spiraling descent with no railing and no end in sight. She walked down and down. With every step, the house above felt further away, not just in distance, but in time. As if she were walking backward through memories she hadn't lived, or had refused to, her mind began to bend under the pressure. A part of her, quiet and rational, kept whispering, "This is impossible," but that voice was fading fast. After what? Felt like an hour or maybe a lifetime she reached the bottom. A door stood at the end of a narrow hallway. Unlike the rotting wood upstairs, this one was made of something black and slick, like obsidian, etched across it in shallow, jagged lines. She waited. Lydia didn't knock. She pushed. The door opened into a room that should not have existed. It was her childhood bedroom, exactly as it had been, wallpaper with tiny stars, a cracked toy chest, the bookshelf with her sticker collection, the same crooked posters of constellations. Her bed pink blanket still folded the way her mother used to do it. Even the night light in the corner, shaped like a crescent moon, still glowed dimly. But everything was grayed, like it had been drained of color, as if memory itself had aged and faded. And sitting on the bed was Emily, 8 years old, wearing a yellow dress. Her feet didn't touch the floor. Her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her face was pale, too pale, her eyes dark and still. She looked up at Lydia. "You're late?" Lydia couldn't speak. Her voice had dried in her throat. "I waited," Emily said. "I waited where you left me. I tried not to be angry. I tried to be quiet. But the house, it wanted stories. And I ran out of things to say." She stood slowly. Her movements were stiff, like joints too long unused. So I started telling it about you. Lydia stumbled back. Emily, I didn't know. I didn't remember, that's the worst part. Her voice cracked. You chose to forget. The room shuddered. A deep vibration passed through the floor like a heartbeat. They made me go away, Liddy, Emily whispered. But you let them. You didn't fight. You didn't even look. Tears ran down Lydia's cheeks. I was 6. I was scared. I was screaming. The shadows in the corners of the room began to move. They pulled away from the walls, forming long, thin limbs. Figures emerged tall and hollow-eyed, their skin like dried parchment. They surrounded the room in silence, staring with wide, grinning mouths but no teeth. They're made of what's left, Emily said. Memories that got hungry. They wear people like stories. One of them turned its head toward Lydia. Its face shifted, became her grandfather's, then her mother's, then her own. This house doesn't haunt people, Emily said. It remembers them. Lydia sank to her knees. Please, she whispered. Let me fix it. Emily blinked slowly. Her eyes no longer looked human. Then stay. A shadow creature stepped forward. Yeah. It opened its mouth, and inside was a spiral staircase, just like the one Lydia had walked. At its center, a wooden chair. Just her size. You forget a thing, you feed it, Emily said. But if you remember, you can take its place. Lydia looked at the thing inside the creature. Her body screamed to run, but her soul knew this was the price. And maybe, just maybe, Emily could leave. She looked at her sister. Truly saw her for the first time in years, not as a ghost or memory, but as a little girl frozen in time. Trapped in a loop of waiting, whispering, fading, Lydia stood. She walked forward, slowly, toward the creature. The air around her grew colder. The room darkened. She stepped into the shadow's mouth. Inside was not black. It was blinding white. A chair waited in the middle of a colorless void. She sat. The whispers started instantly, dozens of voices. All fragments of memory and truth. They clawed at her ears, at her mind, filling her with every moment she had ignored. Every scream she had failed to hear, but she sat still. She remembered, and the floorboards above her began to still. In the bedroom, Emily stood alone. The shadow creatures vanished, folding back into the walls like smoke. The stars on the wallpaper began to glow again. Color bled back into the room. She walked to the door. The staircase reappeared beneath the floorboard. But this time, it went up. She climbed and left the house for the first time in 30 years. Emily stood on the porch. The air was thick with morning fog. The forest quiet in that reverent way that always followed a storm. Dew clung to the cracked wooden railing like tiny pearls. The house behind her groaned, stretching like something waking from a long sleep. But Emily was still. She hadn't breathed real air in 30 years. Her chest rose cautiously. Her fingers curled around the splintered banister, anchoring her. The trees were taller now. The road was gone. The world had changed, but she was alive. She stepped down into the overgrown yard. Grass reached her knees. The bones of a forgotten tricycle lay buried in a bush. Her shoes yellow canvas were too clean for this place. She walked anyway. Each step away from the house felt like a betrayal, leaving something behind. She looked back. The windows stared at her like I still watching, still remembering. But they didn't try to pull her back. Not yet, because someone else had taken her place. Lydia. Emily closed her eyes, and for the first time in decades, she felt her sister's thoughts, not in fragments or echoes, but as if their memories were threads sewn back together. Lydia was down there now, beneath the floorboards, her body cold, her mind alive. The house had taken her, but it hadn't destroyed her. It had preserved her, half a mile from the property. Emily found the road, a new one, paved and lined with faded reflectors. She followed it until she saw the first sign of the world, a mailbox. Bent, rusted, painted in flaking white letters, Carter. She didn't know them. The world had gone on. Other families had lived. Forgotten things had settled into the land. She reached the small town by late morning. Cars passed. People walked. No one looked at her twice. She was just a girl alone, wearing an old yellow dress with muddy shoes and wide, quiet eyes. She wandered into a cafe. The door chimed. A woman behind the counter smiled. "Hey there, sweetheart. You lost?" Emily looked at her, blinked slowly, and said, "No, I'm just catching up." The woman tilted her head. "You hungry? We've got muffins. You want to call someone?" Emily nodded. "I want to find Lydia Bell." The woman frowned. "L sounds familiar." She turned to a wall where a corkboard hung with old notices. Lost dogs. Community events, and near the bottom, a photo printed on yellowed paper. A school portrait of Lydia, maybe 10 years old. Above it, faded words, "Missing Lydia Bell, age 6. Last seen near her grandfather's farmhouse." The date read, June 17th, 1995. Emily touched the photo gently. She never left. She never really left. Back in the house, the chair sat in a chamber of silence. Lydia's body was still, but her mind drifted through the walls. She could hear everything now, the breath of the wood, the shifting bones of the foundation. She heard the voices of others who had been forgotten. She heard Emily, above, moving through the world again, and though she should have felt trapped, Lydia felt peace. She remembered every moment she'd buried, every truth she'd run from, every lie her grandfather whispered when her mother wasn't looking, asterisk. The house whispered to her now, but not with hunger. With trust. "You remember," it said, "so you may stay." And she did. She no longer needed doors. Her thoughts drifted. Through beams and plaster, into hidden rooms, into cracks in the wall where secrets slept. She could feel time, like layers of paint. Each memory, its own color, chipped and faded. But still there. In the attic she found her mother's letters, never sent. In the cellar, she found her grandfather's confession, scrawled in a forgotten journal. The house doesn't kill. It trades one memory for another. It doesn't take what isn't offered. Lydia understood now. It had never been about cruelty. It had been about balance. The house had needed someone to remember, someone to stay, someone to tell the story. And now, Lydia was that voice. Emily sat on a bench outside the cafe, muffin in her hands, though she hadn't touched it. A man approached, told her, with salt in his beard and eyes that narrowed when he saw her, "You're Bell's girl, aren't you?" She looked up. "Do you know Lydia?" He nodded slowly. "Went to school with her. Everyone said she disappeared. Her family, they were strange. That house up in the hills, no one goes there anymore. Still, no going back." The man blinked. "Back where?" "To the house." He shook his head. "No one comes back from it." Emily smiled, soft and sad. "That's because they forget." They won't. That night, under a sky full of stars, Emily returned to the porch. The windows didn't watch her this time. The house welcomed her. She stepped inside. The floorboards creaked from beneath. She heard a heartbeat and then her sister's voice. He came back. The floorboard lifted without effort this time. Emily knelt beside it, palms flat against the edges, feeling the warmth from the earth. Not warmth, but fire-like breath. The house was alive and more than ever. Not clothing, not protest. It recognized her, and beneath that recognition was something else, permission. A spiral staircase waited. She stepped down, one foot after the other. Not afraid, not hurried. Her flashlight flickered, then stabilized. The steps seemed shorter. This time, though she couldn't tell if the descent had changed or if she had. At the bottom, the chair stood empty, and Lydia was gone. Lydia, Emily whispered, her voice absorbed into the quiet no reply. But she didn't feel alone. The chamber had changed. The stone walls shimmered faintly, etched with symbols now visible, circles within circles, marks that hung softly as if reacting to her presence, and in the center of the far wall, a door, not wooden, not stone, bone, carved from something pale and ancient. It pulsed faintly like something slumbered just behind it. No handle, no hinges. Just a crack down the middle where two halves waited to be pulled apart. A message was carved above it. Memory is the gate. Blood is the key. Emily stared at her palm. She didn't hesitate. A sharp edge of stone did the job, a shallow cut across her hand. Blood welled up, dark and slow. She pressed it to the door. The bone groaned, then split. She stepped through. The room beyond was vast, cavernous. A hollow cathedral beneath the earth, ceiling unseen, swallowed by shadow. Shelves lined the walls, not of books, but of objects. Trinkets, toys, locks of hair, teeth, photographs, dolls with missing eyes. Memories. Emily stepped between the shelves, and with every step, something whispered. The air buzzed with fragments. She didn't cry until the third night. He said he would come back. This was hers. She forgot she had it. Don't forget. Don't forget. Don't she? Stopped. A shape stood at the far end of the room, tall, cloaked, featureless. Its body seemed carved from dust and threadbare fabric. Its face hidden behind a mask made from broken mirrors. Each shard reflected a different version of her, older, younger, crying, screaming. The archivist. Lydia had told her once when they were little, playing in the dark closet behind their bedroom, that the house had a keeper. Someone who held the keys to the forgotten. She'd said it like a joke, like a scary story told with a flashlight under the chin. But it was true. The archivist raised a hand. The mirror shifted. A small voice whispered behind her. That's where she left me. Emily turned and saw a vision of herself at 5, curled up in the wooden toy chest, shivering, crying, waiting for someone who never came. She gasped. The archivist spoke not aloud, but through the air itself. You are not the first to descend. Emily nodded slowly. I know, but you are the first to remember willingly. The voice was neither male nor female. It sounded like many voices speaking at once, souled, cracked, layered like sediment. That makes you different. Emily stepped closer. Where is Lydia? She walks the memory now. She tends the forgotten. She chose to remain. She traded herself for you. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. Can I see her? The archivist tilted its head. The mirror on its chest shimmered, then cleared. Lydia stood in a long hallway made of doors. She was older now, wearing a simple dress, barefoot. Her hands touched each doorknob with care. Every door opened with a whisper of memory, some kind, some cruel. Behind one, a mother humming a lullaby. Behind another, a boy burying a photograph. Behind the third, a screaming girl locked in a cellar. Lydia opened each. She did not flinch. She simply remembered for those who could not. Emily reached for the mirror. If I stay, can I help her? The archivist paused. You have left the house. You are no longer bound. You remembered because it matters to you. That is enough. But choose carefully. This place takes what is offered freely, and it never gives it back in the same shape. Emily lowered her hand. Then I won't stay. Not now. The archivist leaned in, and its mask cracked faintly. Then, take what you must. Tell what they've forgotten. Return when they listen. The room dimmed. Emily awoke on the floor of the old bedroom. The floorboard was still open. The stairs gone. In her palm, a small, broken piece of mirror. Lydia's face was still inside, it watching. Waiting that night, Emily sat at the old kitchen table, the one that had disappeared days ago, but had now reappeared, dusty and whole. She opened a notebook. She began to write. The first line, "The house doesn't haunt. It remembers. And so do I." The town didn't know what to make of her. Emily Bell appearing out of nowhere, same face from the missing person reports, same eyes, same voice, but somehow not a girl who should have aged. Not after 30 years, no family, no official records of survival, no one to explain how she had walked out of the woods alone and unharmed. She was a ghost walking on two legs. People did what they always did with ghosts. They watched, whispered, then tried to forget. But forgetting had consequences, and this time, Emily was watching them. She rented a room above the cafe. It's quiet and simple. She kept the window open at night and wrote by candlelight because the hum of electricity gave her headaches now. To modern, to loud each night. She added pages to the journal she had begun in the house. She wrote not like a child, but like someone who had lived too many lives. She wrote, "Some houses burn their memories to stay warm. This one feeds them. And in return, it never dies." And another page, "Lydia tends to the dead memories, the ones people buried on purpose. But the world is getting louder, and I can hear her calling." She didn't know if she was preparing herself to go back or trying. To warn others not to, because the whispers had begun again. Not from beneath the floorboards, from other people. It started with a boy, 17. Dark-eyed, sharp-tongued and curious in the way that breaks things. He came into the cafe one morning, headphones blaring some thudding beat. Stopped when he saw Emily scribbling into her journal. He stared a moment too long, then said, "Hey, you're that girl from the house, right?" Emily didn't look up. "What house?" "The Bell house. My uncle said it's haunted. Said a bunch of weird stuff happened there when he was a kid. Said a girl went missing. Maybe two. Some shut-in grandfather with a shotgun and no neighbors." Emily paused and lifted her gaze. "Don't go up there," he smirked.
"Dear."
"Not the boss of me." She closed the journal gently. "Then at least bring salt." He blinked. "What? Salt? For the doors? And something small? You don't mind losing?" "You're crazy," she smiled sadly. "No, just remembered." That night, the boy and two friends hiked up the hill. They didn't knock. The house didn't protest. The door creaked open on its own, as if it had been waiting. Inside, everything was just as Lydia had left it. Dusty, cold, and aware. They laughed, filmed videos, dared each other to go into the basement. They didn't know the basement was gone. Now, it was something deeper. At 2:14 a.m., the first scream echoed into the trees. At 3:06 a.m., the lights of the town flickered. At 4:12 a.m., Emily sat bolt upright, in bed, blood running from her nose. "Lydia," she whispered. They opened the wrong door. By morning, only one boy came back. He was barefoot, eyes glassy, and mumbling a nursery rhyme no one recognized. His hands were covered in black dust. His mouth had been sewn shut not with thread, but with hair. He would never speak again. The town whispered again. They sent police. They found nothing in the house. No sign of the other two. No evidence of violence. But one officer refused to go into the attic. He claimed something knocked from inside the walls. Something that said, "We remember you." Emily returned to the house the following night, alone. She brought the journal with her. And salt. She placed it across the threshold. The house didn't resist. She stepped inside. Everything was quieter, not dead tense. She walked to the fireplace. The panel was already open. The black box was gone. But a new item sat inside. A folded piece of cloth. She unwrapped it. Inside was a name tag, stained and torn. Lucas, one of the missing boys. And beneath it, a key. Cold, heavy, iron. She felt Lydia's presence then, strong, urgent, deep below. And something else. Something older. In the basement dash, that dash was dash, no dash, longer dash, a dash basement. Lydia moved through the doors. She no longer walked, she glided, like memory itself. But something had changed. A door had opened without her consent, and the archivist was waiting for her. Its mirror mask cracked. Outsiders entered, it said, without offering, without remembering. Then the house took back, Lydia said. Not enough. Behind them a new corridor had formed, not made of memory but intention, wrought from black stone, crawling with names carved upside down. At the end, a gate of flesh and iron. Pulsing like a vein, Lydia stepped closer. The gate whispered her name. Wrongly, she recoiled. As the archivist said nothing, Lydia turned. It's waking, isn't it? The archivist tilted its head. They forget too much now. And what is forgotten, ... becomes free. Above, Emily stared at the key. It pulsed with heat. A new door had formed in the wall behind her, never there. Before, its wood was blackened, burned around the edges as though something had tried to escape. Carved across it, what you bury will dig its way back. She turned the key, the lock clicked. The door creaked open, and far below, Lydia whispered, "No." Air grew heavier as Emily stepped through the blackened door. The faint glow of the key in her palm was the only light guiding her downward into a place untouched by time, trembling with ancient menace. The walls pulsed, veins of shadow stretching like living roots. The scent of damp earth mixed with something metallic, like blood long dried. She swallowed hard. This wasn't just a room. It was a grave. Below, Lydia moved faster than the eye could track, weaving through doors that opened into frozen moments of grief and rage. Behind one door, a mother weeping over a child she'd lost. Another, a man screaming into an empty sky. The memories blurred together, but beneath them was something else. A presence that did not belong to anyone. Emily's footsteps held against stone as she descended spirals. The walls whispered warnings she couldn't quite catch. She reached the chamber's center. A pit yawned before her gaping maw of darkness. Something lived inside. At the pit's edge, a twisted figure writhed. Its skin was patchwork of decay, and bone eyes were hollow wells of nothingness. It was the house's forgotten. The memories it consumed and destroyed. The ones too painful and too dangerous to remember. It reached out long. Clawed fingers stretched toward Emily. A breath caught. She stood firm above. Lydia reached the same chamber, her fingers trembling as the archivist's mask shattered completely, revealing a hollow skull beneath. It was waking because of it. The archivist rasped. Lydia's voice was calm, resolute. "We will remember. We will bind it. And if we fail, then the silence beneath the floorboards will become the silence of the world." Emily met the creature's gaze. There was hunger and sorrow in the flesh. "You are not forgotten," she whispered, holding up the broken mirror shard from the house. The shard gleamed, reflecting light into the abyss. creature recoiled, but Emily stepped forward. "You will not consume what still lives." The chamber shook. Stone-cracked Lydia cried, hands raised, chanting words that tasted like old grief and hope. The creature snarled up, recoiling as shimmering chains of light erupted from the neighbors, binding its limbs. "Hold the memory, Lydia," said a voice rising like a prayer. Emily joined it, clutching the key. Together, they wove a lattice of light and reflection, sealing the pit. The darkness hissed. Then silence. The house trembled. The pit closed. Lydia collapsed, breath ragged but eyes bright. Emily smiled through tears. The silence is ours to keep. Outside, dawn broke. Birds sang, and the house waited, quiet, alive, and remembering. The morning light seeped through the grimy windows. But inside the house, shadows still clung stubbornly to corners and crevices. Emily sat cross-legged on the floor, her hands trembling as she reread the pages of the journal. The words felt heavier now, each sentence a tether binding her to the house, to Lydia, to the silence that whispered beneath the floorboards. Asterisk. The air was thick with anticipation. Upstairs, the house groaned like a living beast disturbed. Somewhere behind the walls, faint scraping noises echoed deliberate and slow. Lydia was awake, but something had changed. The archivist, no longer masked, watched with hollow eyes that seemed to flicker with a distant, though terrible light. "Barrier is thin," it said. "The darkness presses, the forgotten stir." Emily's heart clenched. "What do we do?" she asked. The archivist's skull-like face tilted. "Remember everything? Remember why they came here?" Emily nodded, knowing what was meant. The truth about their family, the house's history, and the shadow that had been fed for generations. That night, Emily and Lydia stood together in the grand room that had once been the heart of the house. Dust hung in the air like ghosts. The walls seemed to pulse softly, alive with memory. "You must face it," Lydia said, eyes fierce. "Not just the creature beneath, but the source of the darkness, the reason it exists." Emily shivered. "Our grandfather," Lydia nodded. "He didn't just trap us. He tried to contain it." "Contain what?" Lydia's voice dropped to a whisper. "The silence that feeds on loss and pain. The part of the house that never forgets and never forgives." Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the floor. The walls cracked, and from the shadows emerged a figure, gaunt, twisted, yet half shrouded in darkness. It was there, his grandfather, or what he had become. His eyes glowed with the void beneath the house. "You think you can undo what I started?" His voice was a dry rasp. "The silence is eternal." Emily stepped forward, clutching the mirror shard tightly. "We remember. Don't run." Lydia raised her hands, calling to the archivist and the memories that filled the house. "It ends tonight." The house erupted in chaos. Memories flashed, flashes of childhood laughter, screams, tears, and whispered lies. Their grandfather lunged, but the chains of memory wrapped around him, pulling him back into the abyss beneath. "You cannot silence what remembers." Lydia shouted, the darkness screamed, sound like shattering glass and broken promises. Emily and Lydia stood united, their voices joining in the chant that bound the house's power. The silence beneath the floorboards fractured, and in the breaking, a new dawn. When the dust settled, the house was still, but it was different. The shadows had softened. The silence was no longer oppressive. Emily looked at Lydia, hope blooming like fragile light. "We did it." Lydia smiled, for now. The house breathed differently now. Gone was the suffocating weight of silence that had once pressed down like a shroud. Instead, a gentle stillness settled, quiet that felt like a promise rather than a threat. Emily stood at the top of the stairs. the broken mirror shard warm in her palm. She traced the cracks where light fragmented into rainbows, catching a glimpse of Lydia's calm smile reflected in its fractured surface. Outside, the sun rose over the town, soft golden light spilling across rooftops and awakening the world. From decades of whispered fear, Emily stepped onto the porch for the first time in years. Breathing in the fresh air, tasting the faint scent of pine and earth, the neighborhood was waking too. Windows opened, voices stirred, but there was no rush to flee or scream, just cautious curiosity, as if the town itself held its breath, waiting for something new to bloom from old wounds. Back inside, Lydia moved slowly through the rooms, touching the walls as if saying goodbye to ghosts long held close. "You're free now," Emily said softly. "Not free," Lydia replied. "Remembering is not freedom, it's responsibility." Emily nodded then. "We carry it together." They returned to the basement one last time. The pit was sealed tight, the darkness trapped beneath layers of memory and light. "Will it ever come back?" Emily asked. Lydia shook her head. "Not while we remember. It will never truly be gone. It waits in the silence beneath the floorboards." As twilight fell, Emily lit a candle and placed it on the WINDOWSILL. She opened her journal, all thick with words, memories, and warnings. Her final entry read, "The house does not forget. Neither will I in silence. There is truth. And in memory, there is hope." The house settled into its new quiet, alive, aware, waiting. And somewhere beneath the floorboards, a soft pulse echoed, neither threatening nor welcoming, but simply there. The silence was no longer empty. It was waiting. You've walked the halls. You've heard the whispers. You've seen what lies beneath the floorboards, what we choose to forget, what we seal away with silence. But the house is never truly done remembering now. Ask yourself, what have you buried so deep, even the silence is starting to stir?